So after a couple of attempts, it looks like Windows 10 is finally being downloaded onto my computer. It's very strange. It was like, oh yeah, I want to download Windows 10. It's like, good, we're downloading now. Click here to view progress. And I'd click on it and nothing would happen. It's like, what's happening? Anyway, it seems to be working now. If you hear noise in the background, it's an elevator. So I only have 4 years left to go on my 20-year film festival. I've been recommending 14 movies for each of the last 20 years, starting with 1995, dividing it basically into 7 movies per video, and that would make a nice little 2-week film festival if you wanted to go back and look at some stuff that I'd recommend from any one of these particular years. Of course, you don't have to go by the recommendations. You could just look at the ones you haven't seen yet and ignore the others, or, flip the order around, do whatever you like. But, yeah, beginning with 2011, there's only 4 years left for me to cover, which means it's only going to be like, I'll be finished by the end of next week, which is cool. So, 2011. First movie I want to talk about is The Adjustment Bureau, which is an adaptation of Philip K. Dick story, and which was directed by George Nolfi, who up until this point I think had been a writer on some of the Jason Bourne movies, I think. Anyway, this is his first film as a director, and of course I think Matt Damon wanted him to do it, probably from working with him on the Bourne movies. I could be wrong about that. But Matt Damon's co-star is Emily Blunt, and they play 2 people who more or less meet by chance. He's an aspiring politician, she's a dancer, they happen to meet and have a flirtation, and it sort of like spurs him to be more spontaneous and personable in front of his audience, and thus his political career begins to rise. But he doesn't know her name or anything about her, really, so he ends up not seeing her for a few years, and then they run into each other again on a bus, which is great for them. But not so great for some other characters who wear suits and hats. They have this sort of supernatural power. They work behind the scenes to direct the path of human progress in the world. And they work for an unseen character called the Chairman, kind of a metaphor for God and angels, I think. Anyway, they were supposed to prevent the meeting between Matt Damon and Emily Blunt, because Matt Damon is supposed to chart a political course that doesn't include her, but she is now sort of a distraction. And so when Matt Damon finds out about this, they're like, look, this is what we got to do, and you just need to forget about her because it's better for everybody if you do. And Matt Damon's like, I'm not forgetting about her. She's awesome. And of course, Emily Blunt is awesome. She has great chemistry with Matt Damon and pretty much anyone else she appears in a film with. So he begins looking for her, and the guys in the suits and hats try to prevent that from happening, but he's interested in defying destiny any way that he can. It's a cool movie. I really like it a lot. Next, I'd like to talk about Our Idiot Brother, which is a comedy directed by Jesse Peretz. Stars Paul Rudd as sort of this, not really a slacker type, but he's just sort of a, hey man, everything's chill kind of vibe. He's a proto-hippie, I guess you could say. And Our Idiot Brother is, of course, what he's called by his 3 sisters. They're played by Zooey Deschanel as Elizabeth Banks and Emily Mortimer. And each of them has their own personal problems, and he ends up sort of inadvertently causing them more problems because he's just so gosh darn honest about everything. He ends up messing up their lives and other stuff that's happening with them. And so they love him, but they also kind of hate him. It's a really fun movie. Next, I'd like to talk about a movie that a lot of people really like amongst sci-fi fans, and that is Source Code. Source Code is directed by Duncan Jones, who is also the director of Moon, a movie which I generally liked but thought it moved a little bit too slowly, and I can sort of predict a lot of the twists before they actually happen. Source Code's a little bit more complicated a movie. Jake Gyllenhaal's main character. He is a former soldier who's been drafted into this strange military experiment to send him back in time to right before a train gets bombed to see if he can discover who the culprit is. He's inhabiting the body of another person, a victim on the train. As it turns out, this victim's brain was preserved, and they're able to go back 8 minutes in time and find out what happened when Gyllenhaal basically inhabits his body, or inhabits his past, you could say. He is able to move around and do things the guy didn't do, and hopefully find the source of the bomb. Find the bomb, find the bomber, prevent the thing from happening, because this guy that already bombed the train is planning on bombing another target in somewhere in Chicago later that day, and so they have a limited time. Michelle Monaghan has a part in this movie. She basically plays another person on the train who has been having friendly conversations with this guy on the way to work every morning, except of course she doesn't realize that she's not talking to the same guy now, she's talking to somebody else. And of course, she's dead as well. They've all been blown sky high by the train already, so Jake Gyllenhaal has to, like, fight her as a distraction, as well as other things that he thinks are important but really aren't. The people that are running the operation communicating with him in this strange sort of weird pod, which is very cold for some reason, and he doesn't understand that, keep telling him, look, don't focus on the people on the train, they're already gone, we can't save them, you've got to find out about the bomb and about the bomber so that we can stop the next attack. The people who are coaching him through this are played by Vera Farmiga and who played, oh darn, Jeffrey Wright, sorry, Jeffrey Wright. I was trying to think of who played the bad guy in Shaft. That's Jeffrey Wright. Yeah, really clever movie, really interesting. And there's an interesting little surprise about how they communicate with each other, which I didn't know to look for. I think I've only seen this movie one time. I know I've seen parts of it a second time, but I really ought to look at the whole thing again so I can look at the way they communicate, because there's some sort of thing that isn't revealed about how they're actually talking to each other. Yeah, don't want to give too much away, but yeah, there's some interesting surprises in that movie. It's pretty cool. Now I'd like to talk about a movie that I wasn't expecting to like as much as I did. In fact, I think it is the director's best movie. And I don't think, there's been a lot of movies by this guy that I haven't liked, a few that I have liked, but a lot that I haven't. I like him in general, but his movies not as much. But this, I think, is his best movie, actually. I'm talking about Kevin Smith, and his film is called Red State, and it is quite different from many of the movies he's made in the past, which are very pedestrian in the way they've been shot and edited, pretty basic, standard, two shots, and the occasional close-up. He really sort of favors dialogue and performance over cinematic tricks. But in Red State, he really sort of went for broke with the style of the movie. There are three teenage boys who have answered a personal ad hoping to have sex with an older woman, and they end up getting captured and held imprisoned by this fire and brimstone style preacher in the tradition of Fred Phelps and other idiots like him. So then the cops get involved, and there's this whole mess, this big standoff. It's a crazy movie. The preacher's played by Michael Parks, who, of course, everyone knows from Tarantino movies, especially from Dusk Till Dawn. He plays I guess he's a ranger. I'm not really sure. I think he's a ranger in the opening scene of that movie, but he's been in a few others as well as Rodriguez. I think he plays like the same character in all of them. Anyway, terrific movie, really exciting, and quite a stunning visual change from the usual Kevin Smith template. Also, John Goodman has a small role in that as well. He's pretty great as well. I was surprised by how much I like the movie. I haven't seen Tusk yet, so I'll have to look at that eventually. But if Kevin Smith likes Clerks 3, I'm not going to be looking forward to that as much as I am these other different things that he's doing. Although he might stop making movies altogether. That's always a possibility. The next movie I'd like to talk about is Rango, which is an animated movie, but it was done in a very unusual way. The director is Gore Verbinski, who of course is the director of the American version of The Ring and the three Pirates of the Caribbean movies, the first three Pirates of the Caribbean movies with Johnny Depp. And he, of course, reteams with Johnny Depp for this film about a lizard, basically, who's unfortunately ejected from the family station wagon that he's been traveling in his nice little, it's not a fish tank exactly, but it's like one of those little habitats, one of those miniature habitats for a pet. And he finds himself basically in a Western. And he is dealing with unfamiliar environments and unfamiliar threatening creatures. The character animation in this movie is amazing. It's so incredible looking. All the characters look great in this. And the unusual way they filmed it is they actually had the actors come to basically a studio, an empty studio, and they built makeshift sets. And they filmed with a video camera all the entire movie, just shots from the movie. And then the animators based the characters and the angles and the action on what the actors did. It's not a motion capture movie. It's just basically an animated movie that is based on a sort of makeshift live-action video, a feature-length video that they did. Kind of unusual, really, really fun movie, and just visually dazzling. Man, some of the characters are just really exciting looking in this. So the next movie I'd like to talk about is by one of my favorite directors, if not my favorite director of all, Mr. David Fincher. A lot of people didn't think that there needed to be an American version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo so soon after the Swedish version with Noomi Rapace, or Rapace. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name. But I really like this movie a lot. I'm predisposed to liking Fincher, of course, but comparing this with Gone Girl, I actually like this movie better. Not that Gone Girl is a bad movie. It's a good movie. I enjoy it. But this has that edge, and that sort of that propulsive pace to it that I really, really love. Gone Girl is a movie that doesn't quite have the energy that this movie does, and that's one of the reasons why I prefer it. Yeah, it's not technically a remake of the Swedish version. It's simply another adaptation of the Stieg Larsson novel, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. But there's, of course, a remarkable number of similarities between the two adaptations, except, of course, that although it takes place in Sweden and all the characters are Swedish and speak with Swedish accents, they're actually speaking English because that's what, English-speaking countries want in their movies. Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara, of course, play the leads. Christopher Plummer and Jolie Richardson and Stellan Skarsgård play a number of key supporting parts. Yeah. Again, I really love Fincher a lot, and so I had to put that movie here on this list right here. Hope some of you feel the same way. And finally, before I break here and leave the rest of 2011 for my next video, I'd like to talk about a movie called The Beaver. Mel Gibson is not a terribly well-liked person these days. A lot of his movies end up going direct-to-video. A lot of people hate him, and I certainly would count myself among those people. He seems like a quite detestable person. But he has been a good actor. I enjoyed his turn as the villain in The Expendables 3. This is actually one of the best movies of the year. It's called The Beaver, and it was directed by his Maverick co-star Jodie Foster, who also plays his wife in the movie. His character suffers from deep depression and develops an alternate personality that speaks through a beaver puppet that he wears on his hand all the time. Everyone around him basically is saying, "Oh, isn't this cute?" He's sort of working through his issues by talking through this beaver, but the true person that he isn't actually voicing the beaver. It's this other personality, and that's quite scary thing. That's quite a scary thing. Anton Yelchin plays his son. And Jennifer Lawrence plays his girlfriend, kind of a small part. This was before X-Men First Class came out. Yeah. And it's really odd movie, and the characters' journey, this path is just like things seem to be going well, but things turn really, really dark after a while. It's an unusual movie, and I really thought it was great. I thought it was terrific. So despite my lack of sympathy for Mr. Gibson, I have to say this is a pretty decent movie. So that's it for now. I'll be back with another 7 recommendations from 2011 in my next video. Hope you'll tune in for that. Thanks very much for watching and commenting. See you again real soon. Bye.